What's going on, guys? Welcome back. I hope everybody is enjoying the spring weather. It's been a couple of weeks since I've got to work on the Rabbit here, so let's take a look, see where we're up to. You can see I got the VR6 in, and I got a little checklist here going. So I need to figure out the evap system. I need to figure out the gear shift linkage. Still waiting for some parts for that. Unfortunately, they're coming from overseas, so still waiting for stuff on that. Got a bunch of stuff over on the bench over there. What else we got? Want to do the oil and filter, flush the trans, need to do the clutch, speedo, and throttle cables, the wiring with the TDC swap harness. I ordered all the suspension bushings, need to get a radiator, figure out all the cooling hoses. I need to bolt the exhaust in. Can't do the exhaust yet because I'm waiting for the remaining shift linkage parts to arrive, and they kind of all occupy the same space. So I want to put the shift linkage in before I do the exhaust. Got to figure out the brakes, got to figure out fuel pump, get the tank cleaned out. I may just leave the oil pan and the oil pump on it for now. Most people swap in like an R32 oil pump and a shallow pan to give them a couple of inches more ground clearance, so I may do that. Need to figure out the seat belts. The seat belts are shoulder belts. They don't have a lap belt, so I want to improve on those a little bit. And then the wheels and tires. You can see these tires are nicely weather cracked. And it's been a couple of weeks since I've managed to work on the Rabbit. Was working on the GTI last week. Put on a big brake kit in the rear to match the fronts. They look pretty sweet. So I think the plan for today is going to be crack on with the wiring. Gonna start here at the front, kind of work my way back through the firewall and under the dash. So let's back the GTI out, give me a little bit more space, and get cracking on. So I am back inside the car, and I want to show you guys what I'm dealing with in here. It is kind of a rat's nest. You can see it looks like water damage at some point. Some rust and corrosion on the backside of here. A lot of the fuses are missing, broken. So I think I'm going to be trying to replace this. But I think in order to give me better access, I'm gonna pull this knee bar out too. So let's see how we get on with that. So it's the next day out in the shop. Yesterday, I started taking some of the wiring out of the engine bay. I managed to get out the speedo cable, the throttle cable, and the clutch cable. And what started as just removing that knee brace quickly turned into removing the whole dash. So I think I'm gonna take the whole dash out. I have a plan now. I want to remove the heater core. I don't think I'm gonna run that, at least not for now. That hole also gives me a nice route to run the wiring back into the cabin so I can keep the ECU under the dash, not in the rain tray. Again, just kind of a temporary solution until I really tear things apart and rebuild the whole car. So I'm gonna pull the heater core out, which means I gotta take the whole dash out. So let's crack on with that. Phew. Okay, that was a pain, taking the dash out. Let me show you kind of in reverse order what you have to take out in order to get the dash out of 79 Rabbit diesel. So we'll start with the dash. There is 2 bolts either side, there and there, there and there, and they bolt too, there and there. Same on the other side. There is also that tab there on the heater core, which bolts in the middle, right about there. And you have to take that out in order to raise the dash up to take the knee bar out. And there is 4 bolts here, one here, same on the other side. So once you can loosen the dash and lift it up, the knee bar will pop out. In order to get to some of the bolts, you have to drop the glove box, but you can't get the glove box out until the knee bar comes out. There's 3 screws at the bottom of the glove box that you have to come out as well, and also 3 in the top of the glove box, so you can remove that. Then you can disconnect the vent lines to the heater core, and then everything should come out. There was also a nice mouse nest in there too. That's why you saw me glove up, put some safety glasses on and a mask, just so I wasn't inhaling any of this dust and mice poop. So now that all that's out, let's try and get this heater core out. All right, the heater core is out. The dash is out, that knee brace is out. Wasn't the plan originally, but I'm really glad that I did that. Managed to do a bunch of cleaning under the dash. Definitely looks like there've been some mice up in there. So the heater core had some mouse poop in it. Managed to vacuum up a bit of a mouse nest in there too. The heater core itself didn't look too bad, definitely been replaced at some point. So although I was suspicious about that and worried about running it in case it leaked back into the cabin, I'm glad I can confirm that it's good. My plan was to not put that back in. I probably won't, but now that I've seen that it's good, I may put it back in. Undecided on that. But check this out. It gives me access to all the wiring under the dash. I can strip out what I don't need. Really accessible. I can tighten it all back up. And I think I'm gonna run the ECU harness through that grommet right there. Should be big enough to slide the plugs through. Yeah. So the plan is to get the TDC swap harness wired. I gotta plug in a few connectors to the engine, try and run that through into the cabin so I can keep the ECU inside of the cabin. I need to hook up throttle cable, speedo cable, and clutch cable. I think if I can get that done, that'd be a pretty good place to stop for this episode. So it's been another couple of days since I've had a chance to work on the Rabbit. I keep getting distracted by other projects. This week I had to replace the turbo in my wife's Q3. It popped the P0299 code, which is a turbo underboost code. Basically means you have to replace the turbo, the wastegate goes bad. So spent about 3 days this week swapping that out. Managed to get the job done in about 8 hours, but one of the oil gaskets got pinched, so I had to go back underneath and fix that. I got the job done in about 8 hours though, which is pretty good for that if you've ever done one yourself and you know what's involved. And then an extra 2 hours to fix that oil leak. So that took me off the Rabbit project for a few days, but I did manage to get some stuff done off camera. And it mainly starts with the TDC swap harness. So Dave over at TDC Shop does a really good job of the harnesses. Basically what you do is you take your existing harness, you send it out to him, you tell him what vehicle it's getting swapped into, and he will make the harness work for your vehicle. In my case, he recommended what's called a universal harness, which is really simple to install. It keeps all the same factory plugs on the engine. Still has the ECU, still has the port for VCDS, so you can run a scan tool. And then you just have to add in a couple of extra wires. So you have to give it power. So he gives you an option for power. You have to run a trigger wire, which comes from your ignition, so it knows when to turn on and off. There is a wire to power a fuel pump. And then I think that's about it. There is a couple extra options for the alternator exciter wire, so the alternator knows when to turn on and off. You have to keep the existing wire for the starter motor from under the dash, so the starter motor knows when to kick on and off. And there's a couple extra wires for attack, so you can see how high the engine is revving. And there is also a couple of extra wires for temp gauge and oil pressure. So I'm gonna spin the camera around and show you what it looks like in the engine bay. So the first thing I did was remove some of the existing harness. I only had to remove a little bit of the existing harness. It came from that grommet right there, and it was the harness that powered the glow plugs for the old diesel engine. The rest of the harness I kind of left in. There is a couple of extra wires kind of here and there coming out of the existing harness that I'm not going to do anything with just yet. You can see they kind of go into the other bits of the loom. So I'm not going to worry about those for now. But if we start right here with the main twist connect on the engine, you can see I've taped this up. He just sends this as a raw wiring loom with no tape. So I spent some time taping that up, give it some protection. And you can see I've looped some of it back on itself to go back around the engine bay. That harness that I took out came down and underneath the brake booster here. So I decided to use that existing route that the wires went. And because I'm not running the heater core, I decided not to run that. That grommet right there is a perfect spot for the ECU to fit through. It fits through perfectly. So starting here at the plug, it comes off. I have 2 wires that go to the front of the engine for a knock sensor and a crank sensor. I have some wires coming here to the battery for power. This red with the black tracer is for the starter motor, goes in right there. The existing harness for the alternator exciter is this solid blue wire. It comes through this main loom from the fuse box, and I just ran that along there to the alternator. And then the wiring harness I tucked around in that factory location. And then the wires that went along the back of the firewall using the existing location. I have the O2 sensor for the downpipes. I have the rear knock sensor. And I also have the mass airflow wire right here. So you can see it all just goes along there. Let's jump inside the car and you can see where it all comes through. So it all comes through right there. You can see the existing loom. I haven't been taped, but the double red twisted, that's the power. The yellow right here is fuel pump. The red is the trigger wire for the ignition. And I have OEM tack if I want to run a tack. He includes the relays you need for the fuel pump, the O2 sensor, and the ECU. There's your plug for the ECU, and there's your plug for your scan tool. So that's pretty much it for the engine wiring. I still need to tidy up a couple of things under the dash. I need to figure out the existing fuse box. I think I need to replace that. Some of the terminals are corroded. I know there was some gremlins with the electrical circuits when I first got the car and tried to power the lights and things like that. So I need to delve into that a little bit more, but at least the engine wiring is done. And that was something that was kind of scaring me a little bit. So I was kind of putting it off, but I just had to jump into it head first and get that done. And then also I managed to get the throttle cable, speedo cable, and clutch cable installed as well. So I can show you that real quick. That little round bushing right there, that's the accelerator cable. So you have to push the cable through the firewall, make sure it clips in from the right hand side so it goes through the firewall in the right location. And so that comes out right here, comes around into the throttle body right here. You see the butterfly valve right there? This right here is your cable adjustment. So what you want to do is connect the cable and then pull this tight, and then you can drop in like a little C-clip right there. And you want just enough tension on it so it doesn't quite activate the butterfly valve, but as soon as you press on the accelerator, it starts to knock the valve open. The speedo cable comes through this grommet right here and goes up. You see it right there moving into the back of the dash. That clips on, you can see right here with that silver screw onto the back of the transmission. That is the speedo cable, so that's really easy. And then the clutch cable, if I start down here, you'll see in the previous episode, we swapped out the hydraulic clutch for this cable actuated clutch. So you clip the cable in here. This nut right here is an adjustment. Cable comes around through the firewall right there and clips onto the top of the clutch cable. And again, just a little bit of fine adjustment here to make sure that when you press the clutch, there's no kind of dead spot in the top of the clutch. So it's feeling good to finally be putting stuff back in to this engine and this car. I had boxes set around for a couple of months, so it's nice to actually put those parts in. And what that means is I can order some new stuff. So I have some bushings for all the suspension. I'm gonna start working on the exhaust really soon and the shift linkage. And this one also showed up from S&P Automotive. That is the radiator swap. So what's cool about the S&P radiator is it's kind of a self-enclosed unit. The fan shroud, the relay, the thermostat is all included in the radiator. So it makes it really easy to wire it in. Just a few wires, plug and play. So I am really excited to get that in as well. Okay guys, I'm gonna wrap this episode up there. Thanks for sticking with me. I know it's been a long couple of weeks. It's definitely felt like that for me with these other projects and distractions. So as always, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, drop a comment if you've got any questions. I answer every single question that you guys ask, and I will see you next time.